We're live, ladies and gentlemen. This is your host, Joe Imbriano, and today is Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024. This is a follow-up video to yesterday's drive time special. All right, this is your host, Joe Imbriano, PO Box 4121, Fullerton, California, 92834. On the web at 5gdangers.com, the FullertonInformer.com, celltowerdangers.com, many other .coms, folks. I want to talk to you today in a different tone of voice regarding the same issue that we discussed yesterday. Look at this traffic, huh? Look at this. A lot of people here. You know, all it's going to take is, one car to break down, two cars to break down, and whole freeway's locked up, right? Unbelievable. Yesterday, I went over a very important discussion about this so-called avian flu that has been found to have been transmitted from cattle to a person. It started out in a bird. And I went over how dangerous this is, not because of what they're telling us is dangerous, but because of the implications, okay? These vehicles here, like for example, that truck, okay, and this truck in front of me, and this road, right? If the trucks don't roll, or if the roads are closed, nothing comes into the cities, okay? Nothing goes out of the cities. For many, many years, you have been fed a steady diet of consistent, subjective, so-called scientific findings, right? As they feed us that stuff to drink, right? See that? What do you think products like that do to your body? Well, it starts out with good ingredients, doesn't it, huh? Water. Can't go wrong with that, but what do they add to it, right? So we've been fed a steady, subjective science diet, okay? And no, I'm not talking about a pet food, all right? I'm talking about what's being taught to you and what's been subliminally implanted in your subconscious, what's been fed to you as a child, what has been given to you as fact, what has been presented to you as evidence, is all really lies. It's all lies, folks. And it's not hard to get people to believe lies, because all you have to do is tell them often enough and long enough, and people start accepting them. And that's why they put television sets in every home, and the FCC handed out a handful of licenses to a select group of companies, and they were able to con you into believing that something can bounce around and you can inhale it, and it's alive and it'll take over your body. And the solution to it is for you to go to some guy in a butcher's outfit and have him make you roll up your sleeve and have him stick a plunger in your arm, right? Well, that's kind of the mechanism by which the game has been played on us. And all the while that we've been fed this steady diet of subjective science, we've pushed our children to swim with the current and to swim stronger and faster than others so they can get to the finish line faster, so they can be part of the system, right? Well, that's a problem. I think the last psychological warfare operation that started in March of 2020 kind of proved the level of the fallacy penetration that has been accomplished by this subjective science steady diet that has been fed to us. But what I want to really bring home to you today is the level of vulnerability that we are all subjected to now. Okay? The level of vulnerability of humanity has never been higher for a variety of reasons. Let me tell you why. Never has society hinged on such a delicate balance of real-time data, real-time supply chain delivery, and real-time absolute absence of individual preparation and self-reliance. We are so interconnected and interdependent by and large as a society that if one thing goes wrong, everything goes down. I'll give you an example. We've seen examples of the cascading power failures when the grids, fail in certain regions, and how we're told that one component of the grid can take down the entire thing, right? Well, right now there are regional ones, but if they want to really shut them off, they can. But the point is that's one example. And so if the power goes out, the water doesn't get pumped, the cash registers don't work, so you can't get water to drink, you can't flush your toilet, you can't go to the store and buy something, your refrigerator will stop working, everything in there is going to be pretty much rancid within a day. Same thing with the freezer. And so that's just electricity. But you see, the level of interconnectivity and interdependency of other systems on the electricity is just one example of our vulnerability. This isn't an accident, folks. For those of you in the United States, which is where I'm broadcasting from, 97% of the United States is rural open space. Let me repeat that. Approximately 97% of the United States is rural open space. What that means is it's empty land. 3% of the United States is occupied and densely quartered with housing and industry, and that's where the vast majority of the population is housed. And that is not by accident, that is intentional because it's all about control. Now, why would that be the case? Well, we know that throughout millennia, the psychopathic, pedophilic, inbred, syphilitic, brain damaged, sociopathic monsters and murderers that run things are deathly afraid of the masses. And so you've seen throughout antiquity that they built these fortresses and castles with moats around them and drawbridges to keep the peasantry from rebelling and murdering the monarchy, right? Well, today we have the similar problem where the ones that like to call themselves the elite are deathly afraid of us. That's why they're doing everything they can to push us into these positions of vulnerability. One of the things that we need to realize is that everything is intentional. There are no accidents, and everything that is an accident is made to look like an accident, but it's intentional. By and large, there really aren't any strange twists of fate or chances when it comes to big events, okay? Even natural disasters, for crying out loud, are, by and large, for the most part, like this earthquake. It would not surprise me if that was a manufactured event. They have the technology. What they have going for them is the extent of the naivety of the masses, which that is the area in which I tend to have the most effectiveness as an individual, and so can you. Because once the eyes are opened, okay, I'll give you an example, okay? As soon as you wake up in the morning, You go from, your dream state, your REM sleep state, or your level of subconscious or your level of unconsciousness to opening your eyes, and then it's hard to go back to sleep after that point, isn't it? It's almost impossible. And once the daylight enters your eyes, you're awake. Well, that's the truth, folks. That's what the truth does. The truth wakes you up, and your eyes can't close again. And that's what they're deathly afraid of. And that's why they have so many disinformation agents feeding you lollipops that are coated with sugar, but at the core, it's anticoagulant, right? So you bleed to death and die. So they have you sucking on something you think is of worth, but in reality, you're self-dosing on poison. That's why you have all these disinformation agents all over the place, all over the alternative media. I mean, for crying out loud, folks, Joe Imbriano has a lifetime ban. Joe Imbriano has a lifetime ban on Venmo. Joe Imbriano has a lifetime ban on Zelle. Joe Imbriano has a lifetime ban on Patreon. They won't even tell me what I did, for crying out loud, but I'll tell you what I did. I told you the truth. All right? I mean, folks, it's not hard to identify the truth, folks, because it stands on its own. It fears no inspection or scrutiny. And it just simply makes sense for the most part, folks. But by and large, the goal is to flood the deck, to muddy the waters with disinformation and lies and fear porn, so that you really don't know what to think. And when they tell you that there is a virus that has gone from birds to cows and now it's jumped to people, and they put that on the news, and they put that in these scientific articles, and the scientists are talking about this, the epidemiologists are talking about this, the virologists are talking about this, the public health officials are talking about this, the people in the government and the military are talking about this. And then when you combine that with the fact that all they have to do is tell you, well, now we have a problem because this pathogen has been identified in a variety of avian species and has spread to various parts of the United States. And as a result, the entire livestock industry, from poultry to swine all the way to herds of cattle, are now at risk. We must take extensive measures immediately to contain this outbreak, to avoid the further disastrous consequences that may result from our inaction. And this is going to take some serious sacrifice on all of our parts. That includes you and I, because quite possibly we all could be infected. And what that means is we all must be subjected to testing. And we have determined that the problem with this new pathogen is the incubation period appears to be indefinite. So one of the problems is, how long do we need to quarantine those who test positive for this pathogen? And that, ladies and gentlemen, remains to be seen and is being discussed in furtherance by the experts. Now, tonight, from our newsroom, we bring you Dingalingo Bimbalinga, and she will deliver the latest findings from the Institute of Insanity in Bethesda, Maryland. Live from Washington, D.C. Here she is.
Yes, hi there. Well, we've determined that as a result of laboratory studies and the discussion of the spike protein and the molecular DNA and the aspects of possible contagion and airborne capabilities of this newly discovered and poorly understood pathogen, that its incubation period appears to be 25 years. So we need to really proceed with caution until we develop a vaccine for this pathogen, and then we have to really figure out how to stop the spread of this pathogen. And it seems to be the only logical, sensible thing to do is to quarantine people indefinitely that have tested positive.
Well, then how are we going to accomplish this, Miss Bimbalinga?
Well, what we've determined is that we found that it's very effective to take people away from the most vulnerable segments of our population, like women and children, and take the men who have been infected and put them in camps and keep them there until we've determined that the coast is clear to release them back into the general population.
Well, then, it sounds like we need to put these people in camps now, don't we? And I think we could probably use the emptied cities like San Francisco and Detroit and New York and even some places in China and Malaysia where we have housing that can house hundreds of millions of these people.
Yes, that's correct. We already have the infrastructure in place, and we have the logistical capability of mass transport through some of the airport and the military operations that we've been working on for years. Underneath Operation Garden Plot that goes back 40 years, we worked on this and studied extensively on how feasible it would be for this particular scenario to unfold. And today it's unfolding right before our very eyes. See, ladies and gentlemen, do you see how far this insanity can go? Now, that was just a fictitious account of what you could hear on the news, right? Because if they can get you to believe, that a microscopic wind-up toy that appears on a screen or on a piece of paper or on your Kindle screen or your Fire screen or your infertility pad screen or your laptop screen has the ability to get inhaled or has the ability to hitch a ride on a chicken breast or hitch a ride on a gallon of milk or hitch a ride on inside an egg or hitch a ride on a chunk of cheese or hitch a ride on a scoop of ice cream or hitch a ride on a steak or hitch a ride on anything associated with animal husbandry and the agricultural industry. And if it has the ability to get into your body and hijack your body and take over your body and kill you, then they have really scared the living daylights out of you, and you'll do anything, and I mean anything, and they'll do anything to protect you, right? Of course. So, what's to stop them from making the declaration that, let's just say the incubation period on this newly discovered pathogen is extensive, and let's just say that the period of time of it being contagious is extremely extensive and lengthy, right? As we were told with this certificate of vaccination ID 19 operation, we were told that people were contagious for like 2 weeks, right? And so their solution was to quarantine people for 2 weeks. Now, in the United States, they weren't doing that, by and large, because it's a little difficult to really put the screws to the American people right now, because the American people have access to certain implements that can make it a little bit of a rough going for tyrannical operations. But in countries that have already been, neutered or emasculated or just quite frankly rendered defenseless, they just locked these people up for a couple of weeks and made them foot the bill. They made them stay in a hotel and then charged them, half a year's savings to pay for it. But the time frame that was determined to be necessary for this quarantine, so to speak, lasted about 14 days. What do you think is going to happen when we are presented with a new pandemic that is 200 times deadlier, as they're telling us it's going to be? What if we are confronted with the threat of a new pandemic that is hundreds of times deadlier than the alleged certificate of vaccination ID-19 operation was? And that what if the incubation period and the level of contagion is exponentially higher, and the period of time with which an individual person or animal or organism is deemed to be contagious is much more lengthy, like in terms of months or years? And what if they use the public health system combined with the military to enforce quarantines that last for months or years?
There is no end to how far this can be taken with your cooperation, ladies and gentlemen. There is no limit to the level of potential for abuse that exists within this paradigm that we have been presented with. There is an infinite amount of usurpation of authority and evisceration of rights that we could be presented with if they decide to deliver a package that is conducive to their desire to do all the aforementioned for any period of time or any length of time or any duration of time they deem necessary for our benefit, our safety, and the greater public good. And that's what we hear, folks, right? In the interest of public health, we must do this. In the interest of the greater good, we must do this. In the interest of our fellow human being, man or woman, we must do this. So what if we end up getting presented with a scenario like in the movies, right? And of course, you know that in the movies, that's what they're going to do to us. That's why they do it, because I don't know how many of you that are listening to me right now are Christians. I hope you all are. I hope you're all a follower of Jesus Christ and you've given your life to him and you've repented from your evil, wicked ways and you've been redeemed by his sinless sacrifice and you've been eternally gifted eternal life in paradise to live in a place that was prepared before the foundations of the earth were laid. I hope you could see, but as you all know, we just passed the spring Babylonian fertility ritual called Ishtar, where we celebrate with bunnies and eggs. Now, bunnies don't lay eggs, but, rabbits are a symbol of fertility. It's a fertility ritual, that kind of thing. But in Christendom, they celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. My point is everyone kind of knows who is in the realm of, Christendom, that Pontius Pilate found no fault in Jesus Christ, and he washed his hands of the whole thing. He said, I find no fault in this man. Stuck his hands in a bowl of water and washed his hands, allegedly to self-absolve from any wrongdoing in the brutal torture and murder of Jesus Christ. Hollywood is run by black magicians, dark magic, if you will. And that's not a racial statement. I'm not talking about the color of the people. I'm talking about the color of the spiritual component, right? They use a sorcerer's wand. That's why they call it Hollywood. They use the holly tree because that's the wood that the sorcerer's wand's made out of. They basically perform sorcery and spellcasting through their broadcasting over the masses. But it's a form of Talmudic Kabbalah that absolves them of the wrongdoing that is to be perpetrated on us by telling us what they're going to do in advance. It's not predictive programming, ladies and gentlemen. It's just the opposite. It's actually a form of redemption for these people. Because if we don't say no, then we have delivered them the implied consent that absolves them of the wrongdoing that they are conducting. And that's according to their satanic religion. But everything in the movies, folks, is a precursor of what they've got planned for us. Now, this is just one of many videos to come on this topic, because what they have done, you see, with the Certificate of Vaccination ID-19 operation, is they got you to believe that something escaped from a lab in China. It was created by the communist Chinese. And then they put these pictures of dog chew toys on the TV set. They expected you to believe that it jumped from a bat to a person. This time, they've taken it up a notch, and they've got plans to move up to a different level of psychopathy and tyranny, folks. More to come on this, ladies and gentlemen. But just remember, everything you've been told is a lie. This is the Fullerton Informer, Joe Imbriano, bringing you the truth as we have a duty. In Jesus' name.